Hello. Hi,
Hi.
Katherine.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Just yeah, a little bit tired, but it's Friday, hey.
Definitely, definitely.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us Friday evening. We have Katherine Chowdry with us today to talk about coping with the loss. So just to let everyone know that all of your screens are turned off and you are all muted. So please don't worry about being recorded or anything like that. Just relax and just tune into what Katherine has to say today. I'm just going to explain a little bit about how I first came across Katherine. We actually have never met physically because we got to know each other during the lockdown. I came across Katherine because I saw her post about her beautiful mom. And I came across that on social media and I got in touch with Katherine because I thought it was a very touching post and I thought she might be able to share a lot of, helpful coping strategies with other people. So I'm just gonna introduce Katherine a little bit. So Katherine is a coach and within her current role at British Transport Police, she's very passionate about creating an environment where people can talk about their feelings and use coaching as a tool for well-being and self-discovery. Katherine, please correct me if I
No,
say
you're right. That sounds good. Thank you.
brilliant. So in 2008, Katherine sadly lost her mother to suicide. And since then, she's experienced her own mental health challenges. And she's still on the journey of healing the pain from loss through suicide. I can relate to that because I have the same experience. She's keen to help normalize the topic of suicide and remove the stigma associated with reaching out for support. So Katherine will be speaking to us about her experience of her mom's suicide today and the impact it had on her and the journey she's been on. So welcome, Katherine, again, and
Thank
thanks so much
you.
for joining us today. I will just try to share my screen with everyone and hopefully that would work. 1 second, please. Okay, does it show?
Yep, can see that. Yep,
Brilliant.
brilliant. So thanks so much, Unjung, for reaching out to me and asking me to speak this evening. And I know that we obviously got in touch with each other through that LinkedIn post that I put up about my mum. And it's interesting because every year for the anniversary of her death, I always put something on social media platform, but it's normally on sort of Facebook, something which is more personal. And this year, I just felt like it would be, I don't know, it just felt like something that I wanted to put out there. And I don't know whether that's because people are talking more about mental health. The topic just feels a lot more easier really for people to digest a little bit at the moment. And I think a couple of years ago I would never have dreamt of putting something like that out on LinkedIn. So yeah, I was really pleased that you reached out and asked me to share. And I suppose my intention is that I want to share my story in the hope that it will help other people, those people that have lost people through suicide or people that are struggling with their own mental health as well. So yeah, really happy to have the opportunity. So thank you for that. I wanted to start off really before I move into my story, just to say that this is obviously my personal experience, and people that have suffered loss in different ways will have different experiences and different feelings, and that's okay. And this is just how I've experienced it as well. And also just to say that I'm going to try and talk quite openly. So hopefully there's nothing in there that will be too upsetting for anybody, but just to be mindful that I think we're going to try and have quite an open conversation about things as well this evening. Yeah, so I wanted to really start off by sharing the memories of my mum. And I think for me, it's really important to paint that picture of who she was. And really that I think when we talk about things like suicide and mental health, we still sometimes find it really difficult to understand when somebody has all these kind of perceived external things that they have going for them in life. You know, you've got a good job, you've got friends, you're married, you've got kids, you've got a car, you go on holiday, all of these things. And then when we hear about someone that's actually, they've got all of that stuff, but they're still not happy, I think there can be quite a lot of judgment there. And I know, certainly from my own experience, before I kind of started to have challenges around mental health myself, I even had that judgment, and towards my mum as well. So if there were times when she wasn't feeling great, you know, I'd say, well, you know, go and have a bath, or, you know, go have a walk, or it'll make you feel better. And, you know, well, why do you feel like that? You've got so much going on in your life, you know, pull yourself together, kind of thing. And, you know, it's just, it doesn't work like that when you have a mental health problem. You know, you are grateful for what you've got, but there's a battle that you're fighting internally. So yeah, I just wanted to share a bit about her, really, before we start off. So yeah, she was a wonderful mum. I had a great childhood. My dad was fantastic as well. So my dad was a teacher. My mum actually worked in the HR profession, so I think I've probably followed in both their footsteps in terms of my career. Both really encouraging parents, always interested in what me and my sister were doing. You know, great memories of family meals, my dad and mum taking great interest in how our day had been at school, lots of lovely family holidays. So everything was amazing. You know, I had a fantastic childhood. And my mum, in her own right, was very successful. She had a successful job. She had lots of friends. She was very liked. She was a very kind person. She was a very inclusive person. So she loved, you know, getting to know different cultures. She had friends from lots of different backgrounds. And I think that, you know, certainly for those people around her that weren't aware of her mental health challenges, it was a huge shock when she committed suicide, because they didn't see any of that. And she was very, very good at hiding that, and very good at hiding that throughout our childhood as well. So yeah, I thought I want to paint that picture, really, that you know, it doesn't matter what's being shown to people. There are a lot of people that are having that internal battle as well.
Thanks, Catherine. And your mom does sound really wonderful. I really have to say, she sounds lovely. So you said it was a big shock to everyone when she, ended her life, because it was very unexpected. So just kind of family wise, yourself and your
Yeah.
sister and your grandma and your dad, how your family sort of took it when you found out she
Yeah.
what happened to her?
So it was, I suppose it was a shock and it wasn't a shock. So when I was probably about maybe 7 or 8 years old, I remember my nan, so my mum's mum, who's still alive now, I was staying around her house. She looked after me in the summer holidays quite a lot. I loved going there when my mum and dad would go off and have a holiday, and we'd stay with my nan, and it was amazing. And I remember one lunchtime her just crying, being really upset, and telling me that my mum had tried to kill herself when she was younger. I was only about 7 or 8, so I didn't really know what to do with that information. But I know that I carried that thought around with me throughout my childhood. So when it happened, it was, of course, a huge shock, but at the same time, it wasn't. I almost felt like it was something that was going to happen at some point, although, you know, when we're within the situation, the signs weren't there. Upon reflection, I can see that there were signs. So, you know, when my nan found out, my mum's mum, she said, you know, it was a case of when she was going to do it, not if she was going to do it. Unfortunately, it was going to happen at some point. My sister, she didn't know anything about that, so I think it was probably a big shock for her. But I think the biggest shock was for her friends, for her colleagues. She had my dad and her had separated at that point, and she had a new partner. You know, I think that he was traumatized. You know, he had no idea. So it was a huge shock, but at the same time, I think that I'd had that seed planted from a really early age. probably was helpful. My nan probably did me a favour in a way, giving me that, because I think it prepared me a little bit and made me a bit tough to it when it happened as well.
Thanks, Catherine. So, because you are so young, when you heard from your nan that your mom was trying,
Yeah.
so do you remember? You might not because you're very young, but do you remember how you felt when you heard that from your grandma?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I just started keeping a bit of a journal at that time. And I got home from my nan's and I wrote in my journal, my nan's just told me something that's changed the way I see life. I wrote that in my journal and I didn't write anything else. And my mum had obviously been going through it and had a look at it, and she saw it and she questioned me around it. And she said, well, what do you mean? What's this? And I was just, oh, it's nothing. Yeah, don't worry, it's nothing. So I didn't tell her that I knew. So yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. I don't know if it was the right thing for her to have done. I don't think it did me any harm. I think she knew that I was strong enough to deal with it. Otherwise she wouldn't have said it. So yeah, I think in a way it was probably early preparation. Sounds awful to have that there. Yeah.
It doesn't sound awful at all.
No.
It doesn't, because for something like that, I lost my dad to suicide as well, and I know exactly what you mean by that preparation, because that shock without any sort of some sort of signs, it's just probably would be just too much to handle.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. So then, when you found out that your mom ended her life, between when you first found out from your nan that your mom tried attempted suicide, and that point, was there any other sort of occasions that you could see that, oh, is she at risk, or is she at risk of taking her life?
Yeah, it's so difficult, because I think that there were situations when I look back now, the behavior was not normal in a way. There was something strange about it. And I think for me, because at that point where it was happening, I was going into my teenage years, I was going into my early 20s, and I was having that shift. I was trying to discover who I was, and going through all the range of different emotions and directions that come with that time in your life. So sounds awful, but there was a point in my life that I just thought, you know what, she's not a very nice person. Maybe I've discovered that actually, we put our parents up here, don't we, most of the time. Maybe she's not as good a human as I thought she was when I was younger. And because that kind of happened at the same time. But when I look back, there were things that aren't right in that sense. So for example, we look at the weather outside now, it's dark. It wouldn't be the time of evening that you would decide that you're going to go and have a walk in the woods by yourself. So it would always be when my dad was out. So my dad, he did quite a lot of things after work, so he sort of went to played cards, he did a lot of sport. So when my dad was out in the evenings, every now and again my mum would say to me and my sister, oh, I'm just going out for a walk. And we'll be like, well, yeah, but mum, it's dark. It's really dark outside. Why do you have to go now? Oh, it's okay. I'm going. I'll see you later. I'm leaving my phone at home. And we'll be like, no. Why are you leaving your phone at home? So she would do these little things, but we kind of just thought it was part of her personality. She's a bit, she's a bit crazy sometimes. She does a little bit of quirky things sometimes. But there was an occasion, probably I'd say it was about 2 years before she took her own life, that she had made her way to my nan's house. So I live in London, my nan lives in Surrey, so it was about an hour and a half drive. She'd made her way to my nan's house, and we got a phone call, me and my dad, to say that we needed to come and pick her up. She wasn't well enough to drive back home. So I had to go up there in my dad's car, and then I had to drive my mum home in her car with her in the passenger seat. And she just cried the whole way home. But she just didn't open up. She didn't talk. She didn't let you in to try and have those conversations. And towards the end, before she passed away, she'd broken up with my dad. She wasn't in a good place in that sense, and she was really hard to communicate with. So I would try and meet up to see her. She would always cancel. I'd message her, she'd reply 3 days later. It'd be like a really short message back. You could tell that things weren't right. But again, I'd never put it down to mental health. I never put it down to that. And I just thought that she's just not become a very nice person. So it was really difficult at that point, yeah, because you want to help somebody but they won't let you in. That's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a bit like that. I don't let people in to help me. I have never met your mom, but it sounds like she had a lot going on. You said at the time she broke up with dad, and she had a lot of things happening. So okay, so and Katherine, this might be really difficult to talk about, but would you be able to share with us how you found out that she took her own life?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so it was in 2008, and it was a leap year, which had a lot of significance, because it was the 28th of February. I'd been at work all day. I'd been on a training course, so I was, I wasn't sort of on my phone. I was really busy, and she knew that I was going to be busy for that day. My dad had gone on holiday. He had a new partner at that point, and he was away on holiday. My sister, who was living with my mum, was at uni. She was at university, so she knew that all the kind of key people were out of the way. That she was going to have a bit of a quiet period, I suppose, where no one was going to contact her. So got home from work in the evening, got a phone call from my sister, who's a few years younger than me, to say that the police had called her and that they'd found my mum's car. So there's a place called Beachy Head in England, which is quite notorious for suicides. And what had happened is that my mum had parked her car there, put a parking ticket on, but it had expired. So I think it was maybe a few hours past the time when she was meant to be returning to her car. So that had triggered the warden to kind of patrol that area to say, well, this is, what's going on? Something's a bit wrong here, because it was February, really dark, early. It's dark and, it's not right. So they contacted the police, who then went round to my mum's house, found that she wasn't in, and they broke in because they were concerned about her well-being. So my sister called me to say, look, the police have just called me. They've broken into mum's house. Her car's parked at Beachy Head, and they don't, they're worried about her welfare. So that was it. That's what we got to start with. And I spent the next couple of hours calling my mum's house, obviously calling my mum's mobile, which was going straight through to voicemail. And after a while, eventually a police officer answered my mum's phone, and they wouldn't tell me anything. They literally put the phone down on me. That was it. So no information. So that was really difficult, actually, not knowing what was going on. And then I think it was later in the evening that they said that they thought that she'd probably committed suicide. And they'd sent out helicopters, so they were searching for her body to try and see if she was there. So that went on for a couple of hours. But I just remember the weather was horrendous. It was a horrible evening. It was pouring with rain. It was so windy. It was probably the most miserable evening in February you could imagine. It was awful, and it was it was not the type of evening that you would want to think that your mum had done that, and that there were helicopters out looking for her. So they had to stop because it was too dangerous for them to actually carry on doing that. So we were left with that throughout the whole night. So I spent the whole night texting her, calling her mobile, nothing. And then I think it was about 3 a.m, and I just knew, I don't know what it was, but I just knew that she died. I just had a feeling in my stomach, and I thought, that's it, she's gone, I know it. And I said it to my husband, who's my fiance at the time. I said, you know what, she's gone. And he was like, no, it's fine. She's probably at a friend's house or a hotel. And I'm like, no, I know she's gone. I know she's gone. I can tell. So that was awful. And I always think that, I had probably about 24 hours of that not knowing and her being missing. And you know what, my heart really goes out to anyone who has lost someone and not found them, because that the pain was just awful, and I only had to do that for 24 hours. So really, people that have lost people and they still don't know where they are, I just my heart really goes out to them, because it's an awful feeling. So the next morning, I got a call from the police, and they just said to me, are you going to be home today? Which seems funny now in COVID, because we're always at home anyway. But yeah, the times when we used to go out and do things, and they said to me, are you going to be home? I said, yeah. They said, okay, can you just make sure you stay at home, please? That's all they said to me. And again, I said to my husband, well, she's gone. Obviously they're sending someone round. She's gone. And again, he remained really positive. No, it's fine. She'll be fine. I was like, no, she's gone. And then it was about, I can't remember the times exactly, but it was early in the afternoon. I was sort of looking out the window, and I saw a car pull up, and I saw 2 guys get out that looked like they were sort of plainclothed police officers. And I just fell to the floor. I just knew what they were coming to tell me. So they came in, they brought her jacket with her. They said to me, does it look like her jacket? I was just like, I can't even think if that's her jacket right now. I don't know. I can't answer the question. It looks like a jacket she'd wear. I don't know if it's a jacket, but it looks like it. And they gave me that message that they'd found her, and that she jumped from Beachy Head. And they were great. Like, I have lots of admiration for police officers that have to go and do that, because it's such a horrible thing to have to deliver that message to somebody. So I think they stayed for probably about half an hour, spoke about, what the next steps are in terms of someone needing to identify her, and, all of the things that come after that. And they went, and then, I was left with that awful job of having to call my family and tell them. And that was really, really hard. I think the hardest thing was to have to call my nan to tell her that her daughter had died. That was really, really hard. And it wasn't a long conversation. It wasn't. I think we all knew by then. It was a really simple, she's gone. And that was it, really. So yeah, that was really difficult. Yeah, it was hard.
So you it just sounded like such a, I can't imagine the evening and the night, when you sort of felt that she was gone. People actually hearing that from police, like 3 a.m. and the next morning when you got the call from the police and all that. I just can't imagine what you went through, Katherine. So thank you for sharing that with us. So you said the most horrible thing was you had to call around your family to tell them what happened to your mom, and especially to your nan, obviously, because your mom's her daughter. So how did that conversation go? Like how did you react, and what did you tell her?
Like I said, it was really, really, I mean, it was so hard because I was in so much shock myself. It was just really, really simple, because there are no words to comfort at that point at all. You just have to take the hit almost with that pain, because there's nothing you can say to make anyone feel better at all at that point. So it literally was just, she's gone, man, she's gone. And that's about it. And she was just like, yeah, okay. And then I think, that's it. I probably said, I'll call you later or something. That's it, because you have to give people just that space to digest it, because it's almost like a stab to the heart. It really is. Like, it's that emotional, but it's that physical pain that hits your body as well. And yeah, like, because I remember just falling to the floor, you know, it just takes everything out of you. So yeah, it was not a nice thing to do. But I think that for me, I invested, you know, a lot of my strength to be there for people. I don't think that I allowed, you know, myself, I didn't allow myself to absorb or grieve for quite a while, I don't think, because I saw myself as the strong person that, you know, I'm going to be there and I'm going to do this and I'm going to, you know, be the strong person. And I don't know whether that's because my nan had planted that seed in me or whether that's just, you know, a bit of my personality. But yeah, I wanted to, you know, I think I felt their pain more than my pain in a way, especially my sister, because my sister was always, you know, I was close to my mum, but I was a little bit more of a daddy's girl, but my sister was like really, really close to my mum, and she lived with my mum, and she was 4 years younger than me. She, you know, so I was 23, she was 19, and I think I just really felt the pain for her as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, if I think of when I was 19, I
Yeah.
think I was just so young.
Yeah.
19, you know, I don't know, on the paper could be an adult, but now looking back,
Yeah.
I think I was a child still.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was so young. So yeah, and thank you, Catherine. So would you like to tell us a little bit about the impact your mom's suicide
Yeah.
had on you, the emotional sort of journey you know you went through, please?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think, you know, when it first happened, I felt very numb, and I think, you know, that's quite similar to, you know, grief in all different forms. You know, you have that kind of detachment, and you know, in the first few weeks after it happened, I did feel like the world was kind of moving and I was standing still. But you know, I think that's really common, you know, when you lose somebody. But there is, for me, in my experience, and as I said in the beginning, this is only my experience, there's different complexes of emotions that come with losing someone from suicide. So the real strong one for me in the beginning was anger. You know, real anger towards my mum. So when she died, she died in the February, and I was in the middle of writing my dissertation. I was in my last year at uni as well. I had to submit my dissertation by April, so I was like right in the middle of it. And I was planning my wedding as well, so I was due to get married in May. So literally a couple of months before she died, I was getting married. And she left a suicide letter, and in that letter she said in there, oh, you know, carry on with the wedding, you know, I would have loved it. Now that made me so cross, because if you would have loved it, why did you decide not to be there? It doesn't, you know, what I thought, what do you want me to do with that? How is that helpful for me? You know, how dare you say that to me? Just carry on with the wedding, like that's the easiest thing for me to do. So I spent a lot of time feeling really angry about that. I really did. And I think that that's quite common when it comes to suicide, that, you know, that resentment towards them. You know, another thing in her letter was that she felt that she was a burden on everyone, and that we would all be better without her. Again, you know, no, I'm not better without you. Come back now, please. No, you're not a burden. Why would you say that? So really, really hard, because you can't channel that anger and frustration because they're not there anymore as well. So that was really, really difficult. And I carried that with me for quite a while, I would say. And I think that the other thing for me is that I chose not to identify my mum's body. So somebody had to do that. My husband and my dad did that. They identified her body, and I chose not to do that. And I, you know, one of the reasons being I just didn't want to see what she looked like, you know, and I didn't want to have that image of her in my head. You know, so I didn't see her. But I think one of the things I experienced with that is that my brain found it very hard to process what had happened, because 1 minute she's there and the next minute she's gone, and there's no follow-up in that journey, if that makes sense. There's that kind of gap, and I think that my brain found that really hard. So I would often see people outside that I thought looked like her all the time. I would always see people that, oh my God, is my mum. I would dream about her all the time. But she would never be talking in my dream. She would never respond to me. So I'm always trying to communicate to her, and she's never responding back to me. And that went on for quite a while, and it was difficult. And I think, regardless of how someone commits suicide, there are going to be, there's never a nice way for someone to do that, really, is there? And there's always going to be images that you're left with. And, I would wake up in the night and, have that kind of, oh my God, she's jumped off a cliff moment, and that's horrible, because that trauma kind of carries on and it affects you. So, that was complex, and that went on for a long time. And I don't think it was till I started to kind of realize that I was suffering from some mental health challenges myself. It wasn't until that point that I could actually forgive her, because I think there was an element of needing to forgive her, and also being able to relate to her, and even just to be able to relate to a small amount of what she might have been feeling during that period. That's what's helped me to put away those feelings of anger, and those feelings of resentment as well. But it's been a long process, and that's only really happened for me over the last few years, quite recently.
Thanks, Katherine. For the audience, obviously, Katherine and I, have had some chats before the session, and hearing, Katherine's sort of journey and her experience, I sort of resonated so much with what she went through, because if I think of, my own dad, obviously, I have such a strong resentment that I actually told Katherine that I'd rather not talk about his death, his suicide today, because I can't control my emotions and I sound really angry. So, Katherine, you said, you from your mom's suicide note, when she mentioned that she would have loved to be at the wedding, and that really raised you even more, because how dare you then, why?
Yeah, definitely. And it was it was so hard. I had to go and get married like a couple of months after it happened, and she'd even picked out her wedding outfit. It was just, I just thought, couldn't you have just waited like a couple of months? She'd just bought a house, and she'd bought one with a nice garden, and she'd been talking about grandchildren. And it was just like, why didn't you just tell us? Why didn't you just wait? You're so selfish. But you just can't begin to imagine how someone must feel in that position. And I've heard this quite a lot recently from people that have experienced that it's not that these people want to die, they just don't want to carry on feeling how they feel, and though that for them they feel is the only way out from that. And it must just be an awful place to be, a really awful place to be. Yeah
I actually can't imagine what one feels before they decide they're going to take their own life.
yeah
You can imagine.
And I mean, people talk sometimes about being cowards, but I mean, to do that, you must have so much strength at the same time, to be able to put your body and to make that decision to do something like that. That's not a coward, that's someone with a huge amount of strength actually to do that. So it is very it's very complex. And I think we were speaking, I think last week, weren't you, that I lost my dad a few years ago to cancer, and that was in a way the complete opposite experience, because he got cancer, and over a period of about 18 months his health got worse and worse, and we followed that journey, and we almost were grieving throughout that process. And when he did finally pass away, for me, it was really important that I was able to see his body, and go through that process where I hadn't had that with my mum. I wanted to really allow my brain to process and to see the step by step in that. And for me, it was still obviously awful to lose my dad, but it certainly didn't carry the trauma that it had done with my mum's experience as well.
So you said a little bit about when you lost your mom, but how old were you when you lost your dad to cancer?
Oh god, so god, there you're asking me now. How old was I? So it was 4 years ago. Yeah. So now I've got to try and work out how old I am. So I think I must have been about 32. So still quite young. I mean, I know people lose parents a lot younger than that, but still quite young. And one of the things I find is not so much now because I'm a bit older, but when I was in my 20s still, when I'd lost my mum, people made assumptions that my parents were still alive. And then they would ask me questions about my mum and I'd say, oh, she's died. And then they will say, oh, well, what was wrong with her? And then you'd say, oh, well, she committed suicide. And then it's just like tumbleweed. Everyone's like, oh, God, I wish I hadn't said that now. So it's that kind of stigma still of that topic. But I think one of the things that I really noticed over the years is how much we joke about suicide as well. Like, it's part of our language. How many times a day do you hear somebody say, oh, I'm going to kill myself, as a joke, like, oh, I've had a bad day, I'm going to go kill myself, or, I'm going to go jump off the cliff. People say it all the time. And it doesn't affect me now anymore when people say it. But, in the early years, that was really painful every time someone said that, it really was. And I don't think that we realise how much we joke about these things as well. And, I'm definitely not one for taking away humour from conversations, but we do need to be mindful sometimes of our language and the impact it can have on people as well. Definitely.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that it was almost painful when people are making jokes about suicide.
Yeah,
Kill themselves.
I remember once, because obviously we work for the British Transport Police, so we deal with lots of fatalities, not me personally, but the officers on the railway. And I remember one day at work, a colleague a while back coming in, and somebody had jumped in front of the train and committed suicide and had caused obviously lots of delays to the transport system. And they were going on and on about how selfish they were, la 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 la. It was really, really hard for me to contain myself and just not say, no, they're not selfish, don't even say that. Like, you do not understand what they're going through, and be sensitive, be mindful, to what other people have experienced as well. So I think there's still a lot of people out there that just don't understand it. And it's hard. I do think that unless you've experienced something similar to yourself, it is really difficult to understand.
I couldn't agree more, Catherine. I couldn't. So you also mentioned about your dad's cancer and his death. So you said that the sort of grieving process of losing your mom to suicide, losing your dad, quite different. So could you tell us a little bit more about how it was different, and how did you sort of almost like prepare yourself for your dad's death when he had cancer before he passed away?
Yeah, so I think there were lots of things that were so different, really so different. So when my mum died, because my mum's still alive, when it came to things like decisions around the funeral, we very much let her lead the way on that, because it's her daughter. If anyone's going to make that decision, it needs to be her that leads that. So I think me and my sister very much took a back seat in those decisions. So my mum was cremated, for example. Like, if I'd been involved in that, it wouldn't have been my preference. But like I said, we let my nan very much do that. With my dad, it was so much different. He knew that he was dying. He was a planner. He planned out all his funeral. He gave us a guest list. He wrote the speeches. He told us what food to have. He picked where he wanted to be buried. We had to go visit that and check it was all okay for him. So it was completely different, chalk and cheese, completely different. You could not compare the two of them. And it was, of course, like I said, it was just as sad, but it, you know, the trauma was not there, the shock was not there, and there was that time to come to terms with that. And there was time to think about how I wanted to process that and how much I wanted to be involved in that. But with suicide, some of that stuff is just taken from you. You don't have the opportunity to do that as well.
Absolutely. So it sounds very much different process, especially with
Yeah.
your dad when he planned everything for his own, departure and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously you are a coach, and you train a lot of your colleagues, and you use coaching techniques at work, and when you work for the British Transport Police. So
Yeah.
what there, when you are going through really difficult times of, digesting these emotions and
Mm,
coming to terms with your parents' death, what
yeah.
were there any sort of coaching techniques that helped you with the process?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, like I said to you, I started to experience real challenges around anxiety. And I was having kind of daily panic attacks. I got to a point where I developed a fear of heights. And I, potentially linked to how my mum died. Um, and I was really, really struggling on a day-to-day basis. But I was still kind of carrying on with that. So, for me, we definitely we'll talk about coaching, but I think, it's so important that people get help and get counselling if they need that. And, I've been through about 3 lots of counselling. I've had CBT, I've had hypnotherapy and CBT, which was wonderful. And, I'm really open to having more of that in the future if I need to. And I think that, with things like trauma, they will come back at certain times and throughout your life. And I think that you have to be, willing, to deal with them at that point and to get the support and not just have sort of one lot of counselling and think, that's it, I'm done. Because unfortunately, different life events will trigger some of those emotions and some of those memories to come back. So yeah, just really important to note on that as well. In terms of coaching, a couple of areas that stand out. So for me, I kind of didn't want to feel like the pain from my mum's suicide. And I think that we all have emotions that we don't want to feel. And pain's probably quite a common one that we try and mask. And, people will do that in different ways, whether it's through eating or, there's lots of different ways, isn't there, that we can kind of ignore and not want to feel it. And I worked with a coach, and she helped me in terms of exploring my feelings. So she helped me to understand that actually pain was the feeling that I have the most difficulty sitting with. I don't want to sit and feel that discomfort of pain. But actually, for part of the healing process, it's really important that we're able to embrace all of those different feelings and make it okay to not feel okay. And I know that's that's kind of the slogan, isn't it, that people use at the moment. It's okay not to be okay, but it really is okay for you to not feel good sometimes. And if that means that you're going to have a day where you feel really rubbish, that's okay, because you need to allow your body to go through those emotions. And you don't necessarily need to see it as negative. So what my coach did was she worked with me around the emotion of pain, and we did some work around metaphors as well. So I was able to use metaphors to describe and to visualize what pain means for me and remove the kind of stigma around that being a negative thing. So pain is just pain. It's not positive, it's not negative, it's just an emotion. That's just all it is. And it's not going to harm me to feel it. I'm going to be okay if I feel that emotion. So that was one of the key things that I think coaching has taught me. I'm still not there yet. I still got work to do, but I am beginning to feel more comfortable to sit and not feel okay sometimes and not have that judgment around that as well. One of the other things that's been really useful for me is being really aware of my internal dialogue and my internal script. And it did get to a point where I realized that when I was by myself and when I had those quiet moments, that my internal dialogue to myself was really, really negative. And that was not helping in terms of my anxiety. And it was kind of taking over my thoughts as well. So I think if we can really tune into what we're saying to ourselves, and try and get a little bit of control over that and turn it into something more positive. So those people that are coaches or have had experience coaching might have done work around things such as sort of your inner critic or your inner gremlins and that script that you have playing. So I think that's just really, really important, because we all talk to ourselves, and most of the time we tell ourselves the negative stuff as well. Yeah, so I think that's definitely another thing that's helped me through coaching as well.
Well, that's really helpful, because many of us, have lost our loved ones to either suicide or any other events. But it's really difficult to digest the emotions, and
Yeah.
just to come to terms with it. I think it's almost, in a way, to me at least, quite impossible. It sort of, it doesn't leave you.
No, I know. I think you're right. It's going to shape you, and it's always going to be there. But you want to be able to, I suppose, make it a bit more neutral, not make it feel like it's a negative thing. And I think it's really important to do what is right for you, and to, through coaching, you can learn a lot about yourself. You can learn a lot about the things that are good for your well-being, the things that aren't good for your well-being. And I think don't be scared to make those decisions that are right for you. So to give you an example, I've never been to Beachy Head to see the place where my mum committed suicide, because at the moment that's not going to be good, not right for me. It's not going to be good for me. In the future, I might decide, yeah, this is the time. On the other hand, my sister and I think my auntie have been there a few times, and for them, they get peace, and they get something from that. So you need to really make your own decisions. Another example, when my mum passed away, we had to have an inquest around obviously her death, to make sure that it was suicide and it wasn't anything else. I made the decision not to go to that. I was the only one out of the family that didn't go to that inquest, because at the time I had just got married, and I felt that I wanted this to be a new chapter of my life. I didn't want to bring that story beyond my marriage, and I didn't go. So again, you need to make these personal decisions for you. And I think coaching can really help you to have that self-understanding about what is good for you, what's not. I love talking to people. I'm a really social person, but I've also learned that I don't actually like being around too many people at once. That's not good for my head. It makes me feel really stressed. So you have to learn about yourself, and you have to be confident to make the right decisions for you and look after yourself as well.
You mentioned a couple of decisions you've made since your mom left. So, not going to identify her body,
Yes.
and not going to the inquest. Have you ever, after making these decisions, have you ever
Yeah.
had those moments of regretting yourself? Why did I not see?
Yeah. I think that, what, sometimes there is. Sometimes I think, should I have had that final goodbye and seen her? Sometimes I think, should I have gone to the inquest, because maybe I would have learned things about what had happened that I don't know. Maybe it would have put some more sort of pieces of the jigsaw together. But I don't really regret it. Sometimes I guess I wonder, but I don't regret it, because at the time they were the right decisions for me and that I made. So yeah, I think you always have that so what. I mean, do you know what? That's a really good way to summarize suicide, isn't it? That kind of what if, so what? What if I'd called her at this time? What if I'd have said that to her? What if this? What if that? You have a lot of those what ifs when it comes to suicide, definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Catherine. So because you work for British Transport Police, obviously, and you mentioned that, there are a lot of fatalities and
Mm.
suicides, and I myself also, on the tube or train, and then it was stopped, and we're talking about, oh, someone's committed suicide, and
Yeah,
the carriage, people are, oh, suicide, and all that look, oh.
yeah, yeah.
So at work, do you guys really talk a lot about suicide on the trails and the tubes and
Yeah,
stuff like
not so not within the department that I'm in at the moment. Obviously our officers that deal with that, they get support afterwards for that if they need it as well. Yeah, so not really within my area of work. I'm not really exposed to that. I think one of the things I found is that when my mum died, I wanted to do something. I think sometimes you really want to channel your energy to do something good, to make something good out of the situation. And I remember that I was thinking about, working for Samaritans and offering to do that. But again, I think that I was not ready myself to do that. I wasn't strong enough to do that. But perhaps in the future that might be something that I would like to do as well. I think now the pain is always going to be there, but it's not how it was before. I can speak about it quite openly without having too much emotion come. When I hear things on telly about suicide, it doesn't impact me as much. A few years ago I couldn't even see a cliff on TV. If a picture of a cliff came on telly, I couldn't look at it because it hurt, it was painful. But that doesn't happen now as well. So yeah, it takes time, but the pain, it does lessen over time.
um well, at least that's good to hear that the pain does lessen
Yeah.
as time goes. And when you said that you still see your mom in your dreams, even though she doesn't talk to you.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you miss your mom and your dad?
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you cope
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, I think it's tricky because now that I'm a parent myself as well, I see more and more of them. I look in the mirror and I see more of my mum, and the way I talk to my kids, I hear my mum as well. So, and for a very long time, I couldn't even bring myself to look at a picture of my mum. I didn't want to look at her. I didn't want to see her eyes. I suppose I didn't want to acknowledge that pain in her eyes. I didn't want to see her. But one of the things that me and my sister do now is that we've got a memorial bench for my mum, which I know we spoke about last week, which is really weird because you live in the same location where my mum's memorial bench is. So that is really, really strange, but great as well. So me and my sister will go there. We try and go there on our anniversary, on days like her birthday, Mother's Day, to go and do that. But yeah, I do think that the memory does fade a little bit over time. It is really sad because if I think about how much has happened in my life since she's gone, I've got married, I've had 3 kids, I've had a really great career. um the memory does fade, but you know what, when major things happen in life, so for example, if you get a new job or something great happens, I still think about going to text my mum and dad. It's an automatic thing. I think, oh, I'll just call my mum or I'll just call my dad, and you realize, oh, you can't. So yeah, I think having someone to talk to is really good. And me and my sister are both really open. We talk about our feelings. If one of us not is missing them, we'll message and say, I'm really missing mum, I'm really missing dad. And we just have really open conversations. And I think a lot of humor, and a lot of really good memories about our childhood that we can talk about as well.
Thanks, Catherine. And as your coach, and also as someone, one of us, as someone who lost, our loved ones to suicide.
Mm,
If there's anyone watching this tonight and later on YouTube who's thinking of taking their own life because it's just
yeah,
tough, life is
yeah,
tough,
yeah,
and
yeah,
sometimes it seems like there is no way out. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
totally,
is there
totally.
anything you would like to tell to people.
Yeah, it's so hard because when you feel like that, you do feel like there's no way out, and you don't want to feel like you're a burden on people because you're kind of wanting help and asking, and needing support. But really, there are options, there are things that can help people to feel better, to feel themselves again. And one of the things that I think I read it a couple of weeks ago is that that pain that person's feeling, when they commit suicide, they pass it on to the people left behind. It has to go somewhere. It's sad, it's really sad, but if someone chooses to take their own life and end their pain and suffering, unfortunately it's the people left behind that then get that. And that's why we're called suicide survivors, because we're the survivors, but we're left with that pain to process and hang on to. But at the same time, that's not always enough for somebody when they feel like that. Words are not always enough. So I think it is about what we can do more in general to remove that stigma about people expressing that. So if people are having suicidal thoughts, knowing that they can say that safely, and people aren't going to kind of judge them for that, and they're not going to lose their children, etc. Anything that might go alongside that, for people that might be concerned about saying that they're having no suicidal thoughts. But yeah, it's really, really difficult, and I think that there's a lot more that we need to do on a bigger scale as well to help people. But yeah, just please speak out, and go to somebody, even if it's not your family. Go to somebody and tell them how you feel, and get that help, because there are other ways and there are people. And I think you had one person on this event as well that got to that stage and has found a different direction. So there are other ways that you can go, definitely.
That's lovely. Thank you, Katherine. And I sort of ditto. Yeah. So as as someone who have never sort of had my own dad, because he took his own life when I was one. I completely agree that when someone, because of their own pain, immense pain, I can't even imagine that when they decided to take their own life, and then when they leave us, that passed on to us, the rest of the family for the rest of their life. So
definitely.
We are not really here to tell anyone what to do or what not to do, but we've had our own mental health struggles. I had a depression, all different feelings and self-esteem issues and stuff. But as my counselor, who helped me really kindly when I was going through depression and I didn't know what to do, because I was feeling numb every day, and he told me that, Unjung, there is a way out. There is a way out. It seems really massive to you right now, but there is a way out that you can't see right now. There is. If you pass it through, there is, and that was the case for me. I appreciate there might be different case for other people, but I just want someone else out there who is thinking of taking their own lives, just thinking that their friends and family will live with that for the rest of their own lives. They cannot let you go.
And that's the burden, isn't it? That people that take suicide often say, "Oh, I'm a burden, so I'm going to go." But actually, you're going and you're putting that burden on the people that are left behind. But I'd say just communication. I know we're coming to the end, but communication is so important. And for me, when the time is right, I will try and talk to my children about this, and they already know that I suffer from anxiety, so they're aware of that. And I think from an early age there's so much we can teach children about their own mental well-being as well. But thank you, I've really enjoyed speaking to you as well.
Absolutely,
it's been great for me as well.
Katherine, I can't thank you enough for sharing about your mom and your dad and your own journey. And we had this lovely feedback from Lucy in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing, both of you. Well, thank you, Lucy, for joining us today. And um, yeah, is it 7? Yeah, it's 8 o'clock, isn't it? So just one more thing also, just I think that, you know, still remember that what my counselor told me when I was having the counseling with him when I had depression. He asked me, how old was your dad when he took his own life? And I said, about 30, 29, I don't know. And he said, oh, it could be a little bit of, you know, the sort of, I can't remember the word, hereditary thing that, you know, it might be sort of passed in your genes, that you are having these sort of depressions, mental health issues around the same age.
Yeah.
And I was like, right. And Catherine, well, to me, that was the moment that I decided, really firmly imprinted in my mind, that however my depression is so bad that I have no motivation to do whatsoever, I'm not taking my own life.
Yeah.
I'm not doing
Yeah.
it to my mom and my sister. I am not.
Definitely.
So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's been a quite emotional sort of evening for me and Catherine, going through our own emotions, how we've sort of dealt with our own parents' suicides, which is never easy. and it sort of stayed with you, I think, for the rest of our lives. But we are here, as you said, Catherine, we are the suicide survivors. You know, we are here. You know, we enjoy our lives whilst we still carry the hurts that, you know, our parents left us, which is sad. But thank you so much everyone for joining us tonight. And this will be uploaded to YouTube after on, later on. So please do watch it back and share with your other, you know, family and friends. And Catherine, thank you so much
Thank you. Thank you.
for the talk today and for sharing this with us. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye. Thank you.